Good morning, y'all. This is going to be the craziest, wildest day you've ever seen because I am coming off a 21-day disaster. It was just a disaster. I worked day and night. I tried everything in my power. I had everything in line. I had everything ready to do to stop a foreclosure. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. So it couldn't have happened on a better day because Paul Kiker is with us. And one of the things that he does is he encourages you to do estate planning and to get your stuff together before you lose your mind. And I will just say, I have just gone through something where I recorded the whole thing and I have a video of it, and I really don't know what I'm going to do with it because I watched it and I'm like, this ought to be against the law, but it's not. If you do a reverse mortgage on your home and you spend all the money, that's your business. But I think people need to know, and Paul, I'm going to ask you about this. With me, I don't think the average elderly person who does a reverse mortgage reads all the paperwork, because yesterday my blood pressure was probably 190 over 110 because this person who had made the decision to not take an offer that we had on the table that would have netted the family, each family member who was on the wheel, $85,000. We walked away with pennies for the family because the lender decided that the easiest way to do this now, because the mom died, the one heir wasn't being cooperative, the other heir was trying to move things forward. Everything was a 50-50 split. There were no problems, no issues, nothing except that one heir was a problem. And as of Friday night, all he had to do was sign his name, and he'd have been handed $85,000. He decided not to, so we had to go to court. So I've spent 21 days. Y'all think I'm just a vacation, or you think I just do this little show and then I go on vacation. No, y'all have no idea. I have been so traumatized by this. As this house sold on the auction block for pennies on the dollar, I was crying. I was in tears because everybody knows the story. My daughter ended her life the day of foreclosure. The day she was served with foreclosure papers, she ended her life. So the person who called me and said, we know that you have a heart for other people and we know that you will help them. Can you help this family? I'm going to warn y'all, there are some families you can't help, because if there's a person in the family who is uncooperative, I can't do anything about it. And I didn't realize how bad that was until the end, because I thought when we went back to probate court, we could tell the probate judge. We spent 3 hours at probate trying to work with them, and they were fine. They were good, except they can't do anything. Probate court's hands are tied. These heirs get 50% of the estate. The estate is about to be devalued and put on the auction block, and there's nobody who can do anything about it. Even though the lender had our contract for $600,000, had our wiring instructions, had everything we were going to do to just send them the money. At the last minute, they decided it's easier to do it this way. And when the lady explained it to me yesterday, she said, you're a realtor, you know about contracts. They should have read everything on the contract. That's my warning to everybody. If you do a reverse mortgage, it's your business. A lot of people love them, a lot of people have done it. She was paying back 9% interest, and I believe the figure that the son came up with, and the son graduated from Reinhardt, graduated from University of Georgia. He's smart, smart, smart. Then we got the other heir, and I am not going to talk about that. But he did the math. She got about $250,000. She owed back $422,000. Is that about right?
Well, it depends on how long.
9%. It wasn't that many years.
So, you know, at 10%, you're going to double your money every 7 years. Mm-hmm. So at 10%, she would double the loan.
That's about what it was.
In 7 years.
Yeah.
Nearly double it, yeah.
Yes, yes. But
9% is really high for 7 years ago.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. And that's what people don't read. But I wanted to ask you this. My idea of this, because I'm working with a lady who's doing exactly this. She has, her house is paid for now. she decided that she just wants out from under all the cost of maintaining a large home.
Right.
So she's bought an RV and putting a lot of stuff in storage, and then she's going to buy something less expensive when the market flips a little bit and changes. So she's going to move to an RV, and we're going to sell her house, and she's going to come out with cash, which is a great plan.
Yes.
I believe, and this is just me, because I've looked at this for 21 days, night and day, 24/7, I think that rather than going to the reverse mortgage, there was no debt against this house. I would have at that point in time sold the house, downsized to what you could afford, either get an apartment and use that money to live on, because she would have cashed out at all the value of her home. Is that not better advice?
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at the sacrifice of selling a home, that's a far better advice than what the other alternative would be. But I mean, how often do people make the sacrifices they need to better their lives?
I don't know,
Right,
Paul.
they
I'm
just don't.
devastated by this. I cried and I cried. I videoed the whole thing, and I videoed, and this is what was so sad to me. The debt on this home, there were 3 people there bidding, and I thank God for 2 of them, because the first one was trying to get it for $100 over the debt, even though the house was valued at twice the debt, 2 times the debt.
Well, you can't fault the person for trying to
I
get it as
don't.
cheap as they
I
can.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't. But when I realized that was happening, I just looked at the lady who was there, and I had told her the story, and I told the other guy the story of, I have this contract for $600,000. We thought they were going to stop the sale. I mean, they started the sale like an hour and 10 minutes after it was supposed to start. So I was feeling like, okay, they've done it. They've stopped it. They've read all our paperwork. They're going to take our $600,000 offer. We're good to go. The family's going to come out with some money. No.
Right.
No. And so when this gentleman, and he did it $100 a bump every time, I got sick to my stomach.
$100, and you're talking hundreds of thousands?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
$100 bump every time. And thank God, and I do thank God for this lady over in Marble Hill. I said, Satan was there yesterday, but God showed up too, because this lady bumped it 500 at a time,
Yeah.
500, and she helped tremendously. And I'm gonna buy her a Happy Meal because it helped. But the other guy, the investor who bought it for 502. And I offered him $600,000 yesterday, a $98,000 profit. He refused it. He said he would take $725. $725. So in one day, he could have made $98,000 profit.
Right.
But the sad thing is, the people, the lender, and they said HUD was involved in this, made the decision to go ahead and sell the property on the courthouse steps. We felt like it would bring 600 at auction, and I think had it not been a rainy, miserable day, it might have. And that's what we were shooting for. I had finally come to terms with that. Well, either way, if we get 600, the family will at least get some money. Only 2 people showed up to bid.
Yeah.
The 2, and then the young man who was bumping at 100 at a time, and thank God he ran out of money at 500,000. I heard him tell whoever his investor was, no, I didn't bring that much, and I was like, thank goodness, you know. So, but it traumatized me to a point. I want to tell everybody, be cautious at
Right.
the end of your life.
Well,
Be cautious.
you wonder why I tend to be cynical. So this is my 26th year in the financial services industry.
Right.
And I've seen that time and time again with poor planning, too much control from the parents over the heirs, no planning.
Have you ever seen a 19-page will?
Yes, I've seen more than that.
I almost passed out. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is bullcrap. They had a house, a car, and a little truck. It was so much mumbo jumbo over nothing.
Right,
And I was like, it could have been so simple.
Right.
Could have been so simple.
right.
So what do you tell people when you're watching them make this mistake? How do you get it across to them? Don't do this.
Well, I mean, I'm not a yes man, so
Yeah.
so I'll just tell people, look, if you want to do this, go right ahead, but that doesn't make sense. But typically, I'm at the point in my career where I get to kind of choose who I work with. So I tend not to work with people like that, because individuals like that just aren't open to any advice whatsoever
Right.
or any prudence at all.
Right.
But, you know, I get asked my opinion, or if I see something that's taking place, I'm like, hey, would you consider doing this? Would you consider doing that? I don't think this is a good decision that you're making. And this, in my experience, these are the things that I have seen. Be careful about this.
Right.
So, but the problem is, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I can make this clear. I'm going to make a statement that some people would disagree with, but we're not a Christian nation anymore.
No, I
Okay.
agree. I agree.
And the
But
reason-
I agree with that. I saw it on the courthouse steps yesterday.
Well, and here,
I did.
and that's where I'm leading
saw
to.
it.
So we're not a Christian nation anymore because when financial calamity hits, we don't get down on our knees as a nation and pray. We don't honor, really prayer in schools anymore that I
Right.
understand. We've not taught
The
to sit
courthouse
down.
no longer says the 10 Commandments. And that's what I was getting at. When I got
Okay.
to the Dawson County Courthouse, remember in Pickens County, it used to
Right.
have the 10 Commandments on the courthouse? I'm standing there as this auction is happening, and I look up, and all it says is Dawson County Courthouse. And I looked around, and I said, we used to have the 10 Commandments on our government buildings.
Right.
Yeah.
And, and the thing is that's a check and balance. There are people who believe, but even for people who don't believe, it's a reminder of the way that we should conduct our lives, right? So there are those of us that believe, and that's the way we live our lives because we're going to have to answer to our Creator one day. And then there are those that may not necessarily believe, but they still have reminders that are there, right? Thou shalt not steal, everything that goes with the 10 Commandments. But my point is we believe that the answer to everything in society today is money, right? What does the government do? We're going to print more money. What are we going to do? We're going to give you more money. What do people do when they get in trouble? They go to everybody they know, hey, give me money so that I don't have to change my life, and make different decisions and endure some sacrifices. Just give me money so I can keep living the way that I am. So when we're all self-focused on money, right, you take the lender on a reverse mortgage. And this is what I tell people, is if you get yourself into massive debt and you do a reverse mortgage or something of that nature, typically you've only got 6 months after passing that your heirs can have
Exactly.
to sell that home.
Exactly,
Okay.
and that was the problem. They couldn't find an original will. I'm so glad
Right.
you said that because they could not find the original will. Went back to the attorney who drafted it. He had retired, but he still has his practice. And this is what I laughed about this. The attorney who drafted this is a financial planner. When I went to his office in Woodstock, they are financial planners, and they let this happen. And I'm going, seriously. Financial planner drafted this 19-page will, and then they couldn't find the original. And actually, since he had retired, the good son, and I always refer to him as good son, the evil son, the good son had conversation after conversation after conversation with him last July. And then finally, I had probate, and we contacted them, and I had to drive to Woodstock and get some papers. I don't think they ever found the original will. We don't know what happened to the original will. The original will is the key. That's so important.
So the person who was managing money was the attorney
Who
that drew up
drafted
the
the will,
that
yes.
didn't have a copy
Didn't
of it.
have an original copy.
Okay.
Yes, and they said they had had some water damage at their office or something. I don't know.
They just didn't have checks and balances in
Yeah,
place. to
and
protect
that's what I'm leading to. I know that Kiker Wealth Management has checks, balances, and
Oh,
checks
yeah.
and checks and checks and extra checks and checks and
Yeah,
balances. Yes,
yeah.
but it
You have to assume that if it can go wrong, it will
yes,
go wrong.
and this started last July,
Yeah.
and the good son has documented everything, so we're documented. We know there's been, she said my will is in the safe. There was a copy of her will in the
Right.
safe, but there was no original. An original will is important. So
Right.
do you tell people, how do you maintain it? Do you put it in a safe deposit box? How do you protect it? How do you?
Well, I mean, ideally, you're going to put it in a safety deposit box or a safe. You
Sorry,
don't-
she said, but it wasn't there.
Right,
Yeah.
you don't want to keep it at home. But the problem is a lot of people go, well, I'll take that down there tomorrow, and then they don't take it down there tomorrow, right? If you've got an executor that you've named in there, get the executor involved.
Co-executor, do not co-executive your kids against each other. Choose a friend, choose an enemy, choose a blank stranger, but do not pit your kids against each other.
No, and that's a whole nother situation.
Oh,
I'm trying
yeah.
to keep all your conversations you're having here
Yeah.
in line because I want to come back to the lender and
Yeah.
their side. But yeah, there's a whole lot of steps that you've got to go in there and things that you've got to take into consideration because I'll come back to that in a minute. So, but you gotta have originals, and you gotta communicate with people. Too many times you've got somebody that's secretive because they're embarrassed, right? They want to have this image that they've accumulated more assets in front of their kids than they actually have, or they're just secretive because they're just secretive and they like to control, right? But at some point at your life,
Nail on the head.
yeah,
Nail on the head.
at some point you've got to come into your life to where it's like, okay, I'm doing end of life planning. I'm doing this for my heirs. There's planning that you have to do while you're living, but there's also to make it as easy as possible on your heirs. Because this is what people don't think about, and this is some of the things that I've seen. So let's say you don't have a will, okay? Well, and Georgia's pretty easy in most cases because it's going to split equally between the heirs. But let's say you do have a will, okay? And there's tension between the kids, or there's unresolved issues with the parents and some of the kids. Those are going to bubble to the surface when the grief comes in, okay? So if you don't make it as simple as possible, you can leave a legacy that you're going to rip your family apart because of your unwillingness and lack of courage to accept the truth and have those conversations that you need to have before passing, right? So, I've had conversations I'll never forget. I had a client come in probably 15 years ago, 16 years ago, and was like, Paul, I need to get my wills done. I need to get everything in place. I'm like, okay. In their case, it wasn't a very complicated estate. So I said, you need your will, you need your power of attorney, financial power of attorney, because if you don't pass away and you can't make decisions, you got to have somebody that'll do, manage your money.
Right.
And my recommendation is always this: if you pick a child, have it mandated in there that child gives a financial accounting to the other children. Okay, that's a check and balance in place to make sure that, hey, every 6 months I'm going to give a summary. It's open books if the kids want to see it. And that's a check and balance for the person that's in control. And it also takes a step to make sure you don't have problems with kids, right? Because one may go, well, you're not spending the money correctly. You're not taking care of mom or dad.
Right.
The next thing you got to do is get a health care power of attorney. And I can come back to that. I had a client that because they had a health care power of attorney, their life was saved because they were able to make quick decisions. Then you got to have your living wills. But coming back to that will, so this client comes in, he's like, Paul, look, I got 4 kids. 3 of them had done very well. I've helped them a little bit, from time to time. That's something that I've enjoyed doing. But I got 1 child. He's doing good now. But he was in drugs for the longest period of time, got into financial debt. I've, calculated I've probably given him $200,000 over his lifetime.
Right.
My estate's worth about $600, so I'm going to I'm going to write this child out of the will, and I'm going to give the rest of the other three to try to make it as equal as possible.
Because basically he spent his inheritance.
Yeah, I mean, he did. So, and I respect him for that, because the reality is, it's sad, but he was helping that kid while he could. Maybe enabled a little bit, looking back. This client's passed away now. Maybe enabled a little bit, but at some point stood up, had some hard conversations. That the child made the decision to choose the right path, right? When the pain of changing is easier than the pain of staying the same, most of the time people will change. So they made the pain of changing a lot easier than the pain of staying the same. So I said, well, my recommendation, the experience that I've seen, is you need to inform that child.
Wow.
Okay. And here's
talk about no more family reunions.
No.
Was it okay?
Okay. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
You can hide in it. And he was like, wow, that's going to be tough. And I said, well, you're proud of him right now for making a change.
What is that saying? The truth will stand?
The truth, I don't know. I can't
Truth
remember.
will stand when everything else fails. Yeah. Yes.
I said, but if it's the truth, I said, imagine this scenario. This child is already probably feeling insecure because of the things that they've done in the past. The fact that you've made sacrifices, the stress that you've brought in, this child's brought into your life. I said, so what do you think's going to happen when you pass away? He's sitting there. You've had no conversations about why.
Wow.
Right? You have legitimate reasons for why you're writing this child out of the will. And all of a sudden, in the midst of that grief, in the midst of that loss, because their relationship had become really close towards the end of his life, I said, he's going to go, well, Dad wrote me out of the will and rejected me, right? So what's going to happen? You're dead. there's no way for you to resolve that, okay? And I know you love your child, so wouldn't you rather have a hard conversation now and let any anger that comes up, grief, loss, whatever, be directed to you, or would you rather it be directed at the siblings and rip your family apart from this point forward? Because, right? I mean, most people don't experience this nowadays, but the reality is families should be closer than anybody else.
Right.
They know you more than anybody and should love you more. So anyway, long story short, what happened was client rescheduled an appointment like 2 weeks later, came into the conference room and sat down and said, hey, Paul wants to tell you something that I've decided to do.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh.
No.
And then I was like, well, the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
So let's just have this conversation. And for me, on the other side of that, of course, I was hated at first, and everybody was like, there's this big initial blow up, right?
Wow.
But then they continued to have conversation, and it worked out. You know, I think it was, gosh, I can't remember how many years later. It was 4 or 5 years later that he passed away. And to this day, the heirs are still get along well, right? So it didn't rip that family up on the other side.
Yeah.
Now, that's an extreme example to use for teaching.
Yeah.
But it's a real example of something that I've experienced in the past in the importance of communication. So you have to have these communication, you have to sit down, and it's important to take your executor and then your co-executor. I'm not a big fan of having
Co-executor, well, co-executor to me is crazy, because these two people that were appointed, this one truly managed and has done everything. This one has been hiding in the woods and done nothing. And so that's why I went to probate and spent all day Monday trying to get probate, help me, what can we do? And they said, there's nothing we can do. I mean, the will states they're gonna get 50-50, but the next day, the estate went from worth $600,000 to worth $98,000 less, which took it down to the debt level, which took the value away.
Right.
And there was nothing probate could do. So my question would be, how do we fix the problem if, you know, all the other heir had to do was show up Friday afternoon, sign a deed to secure debt, we were going to pay off the loan, and then hold the property until probate was over. So that meant we would take 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it took to probate this will. He didn't show up. So then we go to Dahlonega and we try to find him, and can't be found. Okay. You know, we have records where the mom gave this person $30,000. So now he has cost his brother $85,000. Mom gave him $30,000. He's already $125,000 ahead of putting the screws to his brother. Isn't that sad?
No,
there's nothing you can do about it.
I mean, it's just what happens, right?
It's awful.
I mean, it's just the way human nature is and what people do. People don't regard others or regard being prudent in their situation. So they're,
it blew my mind. I mean, we sat there 3 hours. I would probably give credit to the law firm that worked with us, because we sat there 3 hours after closing. After the attorney's office closed, they didn't even leave. They stayed with us, hoping that he was still on his way.
Right.
And finally, at dark 30, we said, he's not coming.
Right.
And the attorney left.
But
so,
based on what you're telling me about the personality, that's not a surprise.
He should never have been a co-executor.
But here's the reality. If the parent had been truthful in their analysis of the children, instead of trying to please everybody, then they would have...
I want it equal. I want it equal. I want it equal. That's all she kept saying.
But you can do it equal. You can say, okay, I'm going to have one executor, and that executor is going to give a financial accounting to the other. But another thing is in the state of Georgia, if you name an executor, you need to name the fee that they're going to charge. Because if you don't name the fee, if I remember correctly, the executor can charge up to 9% to process the estate.
See, I've never seen anybody take a penny for being the executor, except on one estate, and I saw that 2 years ago. And it surprised me, because I thought, I've never seen anybody take it. They just did it out of the courtesy or whatever, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what's funny. So in 9 in 10, 90% of the situations, for every story that's bad, there are a lot of stories that are good, okay? So
if you do it right.
I have seen 3 stories in the past 10 years, where 4 actually. My mother-in-law was one. So my mother-in-law's mother passed away, and mom was kind of bipolar, grandmom was kind of bipolar, had some issues, and got mad at Judy, my mother-in-law, for something ridiculous, wrote her out of the will. She passed away a year later. Well, her sisters came in and said, we know mom is not fair. They split the estate 3 ways because they knew how mom was and that it was unjust in what she did.
Yeah.
So I would say out of 10 situations that end up that way, I would say 7 in 10 end up doing the right thing. 7 in 10 of those executors will take a reasonable fee, because the reality is there is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, yeah.
You know, and depending upon the size of the estate, you know, 1 to 2% is appropriate, or at a minimum reimbursement of funds. Like a lot of the clients that I work with, when they're processing, the executor will get a reimbursement of the expenses that they put out, but they don't take an additional fee.
Right. And that's what, that makes sense to me. That's just,
So let's go back to that situation. Let's go step by step. A couple of things that could have been done. One, the attorney should have kept original copy. Okay, that's what you're paying that attorney for. They should have had an original copy that the executor knew, and they went down to a safety deposit box and deposited that into the safety deposit box. The third thing that should have been done, there should not have been a co-executor.
Right,
Okay?
exactly.
Have the most responsible child, not the one you like the most.
Exactly.
Not the one you like the most.
Exactly. The one that took care of you during your death and everything else. I mean, I don't get it.
Well, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be the one that takes care of you during your death, because there may be somebody that's gifted at care, but they don't have the personality structure to do what's right.
Right.
Okay, or they've got bitterness. You have to have the kid in your family that is the most likely to remove all emotional barriers and say, this is what the will is, this is what I'm going to do.
Execute the will.
And give a financial accounting to those heirs. So if you'd had one executor, or if that executor had have known to go get a signature from the brother or sibling to have them relinquish their co-executor duties.
Tried for 7 months.
And they refused it. Okay.
Wouldn't do it.
So at least they tried it.
Yeah, 7 months.
Then that would have solved the problem, the single executor.
Let me tell you what's so strange about this. When I got this phone call, I've known this family for 50 years. The lady who died's family, but I didn't know anything about the family she married into. And so I get this call, and I'm like, oh gosh, okay, yeah. And they said, you know this, da-da-da-da-da. And I realized, yes, I did, because I knew that family for 52 years when we lived at Hill City. So I thought, oh, wow, okay. But they had moved over into Forsyth County, or into Dawson County. And so I said, okay. And so I got involved in it. And then the more I got involved in it, the sadder I got, because I thought, and this was like 2 weeks in, I'm sitting at the kitchen table with the brother, the good brother, and we're going through all this paperwork, and he hands me the letter of foreclosure. And do you know what date it was dated on?
What?
January the 12th. Do you know what happened on January the 12th?
No.
My daughter committed suicide.
That,
When he handed me that letter, I was already ready to give up, because it was a bad situation. But after I saw that letter, I just looked up and said, God, we're going to do this.
yeah.
And I felt like we could, and we almost did. But the lender had the ability to stop it and accept the wire, and they wouldn't do it.
But that's heartbreaking.
It was simple for
tried.
them. It was simple for them, and they took the simple way out.
It
And
would've
I
been-
understand that.
It would have been simple, but when you are not rewarded in today's society for integrity, and you don't place value on integrity, okay, 30 years ago, then I think that would have been a normal situation. And 30 years ago, the courts would have held some responsibility for the corporations. But we're in a situation now, and the evidence is everywhere, Cherie. I mean, we're in a situation now where the corporations are the biggest contributors to our politicians.
Sure, sure.
And our politicians serve our corporations.
Sure.
The law,
The little man no longer matters.
the law has been weaponized for your political leanings, okay?
Yep.
So there's no justice in the law. I just about took a picture of it. Now, our local courthouse is great, but I had to go pick up my conceal and carry permit yesterday. And I noticed in the back when you go in there, they had the scales of justice thing, right? Well, Well, there were nothing to put on each side of the scales. It was just a bar sitting on the side, and I thought that's a classic representation of our nation as a whole right now.
Wow.
There's no scales of justice.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that should have happened, which I'm surprised about. One, and this is where we go to the letter of the law. When people are following the letter of the law, but they're not taking their responsibility into consideration, right? So that lender has no vested interest
No.
in spending another week
No. Another day.
trying to work this out.
Yeah, no.
Okay, because the reality is, how much was the reverse mortgage for? You said 400 and something thousand?
422,000.
Okay.
Oh, that's the other thing. I have a print off that they gave us to wire 422. They did the auction at 421, and I held up the paper and I said, look, people, you can't start this auction at 422. It's 421 that you're starting it at, and 422 is what they just told us to wire. How can you do this? But they started at 421, so I don't know how that happened.
Well, I mean, the reality is, on a reverse mortgage, depending upon the contract, there's no clawback from the family or the estate. So if they'd only gotten 400 for the house, that was their risk.
Right.
Okay, they would have
Right.
lost that. They would have
Exactly.
asked for it from you because they're going to ask for
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But you had no legal responsibility, depending upon that contract, right?
Yep, yep. And that's
I'm
the
99%
key, depending
sure.
on the contract. If you'd have heard the lady who read me my right act yesterday after they took the house, and she kept reading the contract, I said, ma'am, how many 83-year-old women sit down and read this whole contract?
Right.
How many 83-year-old women understand this contract? How many 83-year-old women even look at the contract? They just know, you're going to give me money, it's my house, I'm going to spend the money, I'm going to give this kid $300,000, I'm going to put $60,000 in my mouth in dental work, and I'm going to have, you know,
Right.
I mean, you know, it's crazy.
How many people read contracts, period?
I know.
Okay.
I know.
So, and especially with the way, you know, corporate now, it's like contract. Oh, you didn't read it.
Yeah.
There's no more responsibility for them to tell you what's in the contract.
Yeah.
Because a handshake and your word doesn't matter
No.
anymore.
Oh,
it's
forget
just
that.
what's in there. So the reverse mortgage company, all they need to get out of there is 422,000.
Right.
And the faster they get out of it, the less cost it has for them
Sure.
in there, the more profit they make. So
Sure.
they have no vested interest. Now,
Exactly.
what amazes me is that they didn't go, you know what, you've got a contract for 600,000, so we're going to put a reserve on this place for 600,000 to try to do something for the family.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
we made money off of that reverse mortgage, but
Made
again,
about 160,000 in
again, like I
interest.
said,
Yeah.
of all the ridiculous crap, that our government is pushing through in legislation, there's nothing in there that's protecting the individual on the other side of mortgages, because you know what? Grandma doesn't give $100,000 to our local senators here
Right.
to pass bills. Grandma's not down there whining and dining them to do something, and it's their
And
responsibility.
didn't give them a vacation on their private island.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
their
yeah.
responsibility. Well, that's to get their claws in them on
Yeah,
the private islands.
yes,
What it is,
yes.
that's about control.
Yes, yes.
And how people don't see that, I have no
Yeah,
clue.
that's
but,
crazy.
But you know, it's just the way. And again, like I said, our country worships money. Okay, because that seems to be the answer for everything. And don't get me wrong, money can make you comfortable. I spend my life trying to help people make money and move,
Right.
and manage their money prudently. But again, through all societies, when you go back through history and you look, I think I've talked about this before. Good men and women, y'all don't get on to me for this, but what I mean is women. It's just easier to say this way. Good people. But the quote is, good men create good times. Okay? Good times do what? They create weak men. Well, Jordan Peterson says a weak man is more dangerous than anybody else, and here's the reason why. They will always resort to their own emotions, their own bitterness, and their emotions and their bitterness. And
I could write a book about that
and
one.
emotions are
I
greed.
could write a book about that one right
Emotions are greed.
there.
They are fear.
Yep.
They are hate.
Yep.
They are lust.
Well, you got it.
They are envy. They are
Dang,
all of those
you
things,
nailed
right?
it. Yeah.
So a weak man succumbs to all those emotions.
Yeah.
A weak society succumbs to all those emotions. So guess what? That leads to hard times. And hard times, there's a remnant of individuals when hard times come that say, I don't want to live my life this way anymore. You take family lines. There are some people that grow up in a family with an absolutely devastating situation, and they have a choice. They can choose to take a different path, and they can raise their kids in a different manner, they can treat their wife in a different way, or there are those that give in so much to bitterness that they end up repeating the same thing. That's the reason why there's generational sin through family lines, and there's always those who have to break it. And breaking it's not easy because you're walking away from everything that you know.
It's so scary.
So
it's so scary.
The sad part is, you know, you go back through biblically, some of the God's judgment comes when we're preying on the widows and the orphans and the fatherless, right? So there's nobody out there that's standing up for this lady. There's nobody out there that's trying to say anything. And to me, I'm just like, I can't believe that they had a $600,000 offer on the table.
I've still got it.
That had you gotten the signature, 4
Friday
or 5
evening,
days later?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then they could have gotten that for the family, and they're still going to accumulate interest in the interim period. So
Oh, yeah.
now here's the thing. I'll go back to the guy who bought it and refused to sell to you.
Yeah.
I don't blame him.
Yeah. I mean,
Now,
he makes money. That's how he makes money.
I don't blame him, because if that's his way of making money,
Sure.
I understand. So he didn't do anything with that had lack of integrity.
No. No.
He was operating under his business model.
And I thank God
He
for
went-
the second person who brought the auction up to where it was, because she held him in there at $500 a bid, where the little other guy was doing $100 a pop, and it was
Right.
going nowhere. And I was like about to panic, because I knew that anything over the payoff the family would get, whether it be $5 or $5,000. But thank God that she moved it forward. And I said, it was so weird. I looked at her and I said, "You're so-and-so's daughter, aren't you?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "You look just like your mom." And we started talking, and she said, "What are you here for?" And I told her, and I showed her the file, and I said, "I have a contract for this house." And she said, "Well, I'm here to bid on it." And I said, "Oh my gosh." Well, I said, "I hope you bid up to $600,000. So she bid up to 501, which got us over, you know, they'll get a little bit of money. But the sad thing to me is the parents built this house in 1997. It was paid for. They owed nothing on it. The mom was drawing a very good pension from the dad, who worked at a very big company and had a really good pension. The mom made mistakes.
Yeah.
The mom made huge mistakes. And as we get older and you want to look young, you want to look pretty, forget it. We're getting old. We're getting old, you know. She spent so much money on the things to make herself whatever, you know, like $60,000 worth of dental work for a woman. I mean, that's crazy when you're about to leave this world. The Lord don't care if you got your good teeth or your bad teeth. He don't care, you know. It just, there were so many receipts that we found that just showed us why she was in a bad mindset, you know.
Yeah.
She was battling cancer. I guess it was her last two raw. I don't know. But somebody needs to know that at some point in time, I had this conversation with my mother. At 70, my mother had no life insurance. And she said, "Well, sugar, I'm not going to die." She said, "You know I'll live forever." And I said, "Well, in case you don't, I've got to pay for the funeral because you have no life insurance." And she said, "Okay, if you want to take out some life insurance on me, take out some life insurance." So I did. Thank God it was a 2-year waiver for any health issues. She had no health issues. She had gone and had a complete physical. When I took it out, everything was great. 2 years and 2 months later, my mother had full-blown lung cancer. So it was like, you got to be kidding me. And it was only enough to bury her and the little bit left over that I gave my girls. But that was it, you know. And I just went to Mama, and the last thing your mama wants to hear at 70 years old is, "You're going to die soon," you know. But my mother and my father both died at 72. They both had cancer. Okay, what are my odds? I've already had it twice. What are my odds again? So I want to be responsible at the end of my life and try to, you know, I'm trying, but man, it just, we look at everything and it's like, okay, I don't want to make this one mad. I don't want to hurt this one. I want to be fair. But I love what the dad did, that he put you on the hot seat.
Yeah. He's like, afterwards I was like, why didn't you warn me? He was like, I just wanted to see how what was he said? I wanted to see your level of conviction in it. And I wanted to watch you squirm, because you made me squirm when you recommended that.
Yeah, but I love
squirmed
that.
I did.
I love that it worked.
Yeah,
I love that it worked, yeah.
But here's the thing. You know, it's like I tell my kids, don't argue with people that you don't care about.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, listen to them.
Yeah.
Right? And you should care about everybody. But there are some people
That
no
really
matter-
don't matter.
There are people that don't matter, and there's so many. There are people that are just going to do what they're going to do anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Like the Bible says, don't argue with a fool, or you. I can't remember right now. I just lost it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if you don't rebuke a fool, you know they'll become wise in their own eyes. So it's a case by case basis. But the reality is, those that you care about, those that are your family, even if you don't like them, they're family, right? And you have a responsibility as a parent, because God gave you those children to raise. Have a conversation with them, and look.
And it's often not a pretty one. Yeah.
What's the quote that somebody said the other day? They telling their daughter, "Pull your big girl panties up and
Yeah.
do what's right."
Yep.
So
Put on your big girl panties and get over it. Yep.
you know, grab
Yep.
yourself by the bootstraps, stand up,
Yep.
and do what's right. They're
Yep.
hard conversations.
Sure.
But the people that are our family and we love, we should have hard conversations with, right? And especially when it comes to the end, because the greatest legacy that I could ever hope to have, money can come and go, okay? I can tell you, you know, if you were a German citizen before the German hyperinflation, by the time it was over, you lost everything when World War II was over,
Sure.
right? Everybody had to build from scratch. So if you don't have the character, the faith in your life, if you don't do what's right, then what's the legacy you're going to leave? So the best legacy we could leave is for our children and our family to continue to have relationship and stay together, because we're in a society now where people don't have relationships like they did before. And when tough times come, right, the more people that you have good relationship, the more people that you've fought through tough situations, the more trust you have developed, the more you're able to agree to disagree, the better legacy you're leaving behind.
Right, right. Well, we've got to take a commercial break, and then we're going to do a song, and this is in honor of Mary Mac's Tea Room in Atlanta, because today, Mary Mac's Tea Room is saying, rain, rain, rain. The roof of Mary Mac's Tea Room, boom, gone at 4 a.m. this morning. A historical national treasure. Mary Mac's Tea Room has been there forever and ever and ever. All the rain came, and all the rain took their roof down. And they have a disaster today. So pray for the family that owns that business. I've eaten there many, many times as a child. I ate there many times as an adult. One of the best places in the world to get collards and pot liquor and cornbread. It is so yummy. And today, Mary Mac's is probably singing this song. This is by Glory Band. We're going to take a commercial break and do one song by Glory Band. We'll be right back.
Whether you're in the mood for chicken strips, a delicious burger, our classic banana split, or an upside-down thick blizzard treat, we've got you covered. Hot and fresh food every day, every time, and delicious DQ soft serve make the perfect pair at your favorite place. Not fast food, fan food fast. Your Blue Ridge, Ellijay, and Jasper Dairy Queens are your meet, eat, and treat headquarters.
Thank you for choosing DQ. How may I serve you?
Georgia Medical Treatment Center now has 2 locations to bring you the high-quality holistic care you've come to know and expect. We treat neck, back, and joint pain with chiropractic care and injection-based treatment without the need for surgery or prescription painkillers. Our medical weight loss program can also provide relief while ridding your body of toxins, pounds, and inches while improving your overall health. Call today for a free consultation, 770-345-2000, or go online to georgiamtc.com.
You know, how you feel on the inside is just as important to me as how you feel on the outside.
Oh, Daddy. I'm grown up, is there in every way, care and take care of you. You're my grown up and I know you're there. I know I'm grown up and you know I care. 'Cause it's you and me and me and you. So when you are okay or not okay, I'll take care of you.
Misty mountain, rainbow sky, a faraway look in your eye. Tell sister. Don't you think it's time to go where black bears climb and waters flow? Hummingbirds out on the deck, your feet propped up, and what the heck?
Whether you're swimming in the sea or splashing in the pool, making a masterpiece, or just making memories, writing a great American novel, or writing your term paper that's due tomorrow. Whatever you do in life, Farmers is here to protect it. For all your insurance needs, call Donald Curtis in Blue Ridge.
Children, rain all the time. Yes, no, it did all night. Oh, did it rain? Rain, 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 children, rain all the time. Yes, no, it did all night. Oh, did it rain? Well, stop still, listen to me. You know, God walked down by the briny sea. He beheld the evil of sinful man, declared that he would destroy the land. Well, he spoke to Noah. Noah stopped, he said, look here, Noah, build me an ark. Well, I want you to build it big and strong. Build it 300 cubits long, 30 high and 50 wide. I wanted to stand by rain and tide. Rain, 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 children, rain all the time. Yes, no, it did all night. Oh, did it rain? Well, after God told Noah what to do, oh, Noah began to cut and hew. The ringing of the hammer was judgment. Singing of the saw cut sinner repent. For 100 years he hammered and sawed, built the ark by the grace of God. Then after the great foundation was laid, he hewed the timbers and the ark was made. Then he called in the animals 2 by 2. It was an ox and a camel and a kangaroo. Then he called in Jasper, Jim and Ham, and God began to flood the land. Raised his hands to the heavens on high, knocked the sun and moon from the sky, shook the mountains, stirred the seas, hitched the wind to his chariot wheel, stood on land, stepped on board, declared that time would be no more. Well, I know it rained, you know it rained, hard rain, cold rain, rained all day, rained all night, was no land anywhere inside. Rain, 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 go away, come again some other day. Rain, 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 children, rain all the time. Yes, no, it did all night. Oh, didn't it rain? Rain, 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 children, rain all the time. Yes, no, it did all night. Oh, didn't it rain? Well, after God told Noah what to do, oh, Noah began to cut and hew. The ringing of the hammer was judgment. Singing of the saw cut sinner repent. For 100 years he hammered and sawed, built the ark by the grace of God. Then after the great foundation was laid, he hewed the timbers and the ark was made. Then he called in the animals 2 by 2. It was an ox and a camel and a kangaroo. Then he called in Japheth, Jim and Ham, and God began to flood the land. Raised his hands to the heavens on high, knocked the sun and moon from the sky, shook the mountains, stirred the seas, hitched the wind to his chariot wheel, stood on land, stepped on board, declared that time would be no more. Well, I know it rained, you know it rained, hard rain, cold rain, rained all day, rained all night, was no land anywhere inside. Rain, 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 go away, come again some other day. Rain, 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 children, rain all the time. Yes, no, it did all night. Oh, didn't it rain?
Okay, we are back, and let me tell you, we haven't even gotten to the sad part of the story yet. The sad part of the story is the good son stayed at the house, took care of the mom during her bout with cancer that she died from. He becomes homeless because of this foreclosure. So parents, today, I hope that we have given you something to think about. Because if you love both your children and your will says they get equal amounts, that's fine. They get equal amounts. You don't need co-executors. That is so stupid to do that. It is so stupid. Give one son, the son that you trust, that is taking care of you until the end of your life and has been there every day of your life, and let me go on and on and on. Let them do it. Let them do it, because the other heir is going to get 50%. You can't do it any better than 50-50, right?
Right.
50-50 means that's the way it goes.
Fair as it'll be.
So, I mean, I cried because I thought, this guy's done nothing wrong, and because his brother didn't show up to sign the papers to stop the foreclosure and to give them money in their pockets, the good son lost. And I don't know how to accept that. I didn't accept it well. I kind of pitched a hissy fit, because right's right and wrong is wrong. We're not seeing that in America today. We're seeing a whole lot of wrong.
No, we're seeing a lot of weakness and giving in to emotions, and
it's crazy.
Choosing bitterness over right, choosing jealousy over right, choosing debt over freedom. You know, that's
It's
just
crazy.
Look, it's our emotional weakness. It's what happens throughout history, and it'll change. But there's going to be a lot of pain to get us back to where we need to be.
Well, speaking of getting us back to where we need to be, I have on red today in honor of the sweep by my red candidate last night, and that's all I'm going to say.
I never looked at the results.
Oh, well, Nikki got Vermont. He got all the rest of it.
Oh, okay.
So Nikki did get Vermont, so bless her heart. But anyway, it's time to throw in the towel and everybody unite and everybody do whatever they have to beat the other one. That's all I'm going to say. So y'all know how I feel.
Hey, I got to share this, so apparently Nikki Haley won Washington, D.C., right?
She did, of course she did.
So the Babylon Bee, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of the
Yes,
Babylon Bee.
yes.
It's a Christian-based organization.
Right.
It's one of the funniest headlines I've seen in a long people. I actually looked at it and I was like, what? I was cruising through some headlines and it said, lizard people vote for Nikki Haley. And I was
Yes.
like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was hilarious. So far she won D.C. and Vermont, and everybody knows if you're an escaped criminal and you need somewhere to hide, you go to Vermont. So anyway,
I don't know much about Vermont, so.
It's beautiful up there, but yeah, it does have some. It's different, but it was so funny because I had to get out this morning. I was going to wear just black and white, and I said I need to throw a little red in there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so we got some red. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being. You're so honest, which is the really good thing about it. You tell your clients up front and personal, this is the path we can take, or this is the path you can falter with. And sometimes they listen to you and sometimes they don't.
Well, the path of prudence isn't something that everybody chooses. And, we lay out options for people. I just explain options. My job is not to tell people what to do. My job is to serve them, okay? But at the same time, we take our fee seriously, so I always tell everybody, the only thing I ask when we work together is if you have a question, ask me. If you have a complaint, share it. Let's have open communication so that there's nothing festering. But please always ask me a question. And the only thing I ask from you is to remember, you're paying me a fee to be a fiduciary over your assets and to help you make wise decisions. Okay, my job is to serve you, but I'm not a yes man because I take that fee very seriously. So if I see you heading in a direction that's running off a cliff, or you speculating, you don't realize you're speculating, then I'm going to share it with you.
Sure.
And I may be wrong, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
right now we're in the midst of a speculative frenzy within the markets, and you have no way of knowing when it ends. You know how it ends because we've got the same thing repeated throughout history. But enjoy it while it can, while you can. Enjoy it while it's good. Peel some stuff off the top. Get yourself out of debt. Get yourself in financial solid foundation, because there's nothing new under the sun. And we've been through the tulip bubble, the railroad bubble, the South Sea bubble. We've been through the housing bubble in 2008, the technology bubble back in the year 2000. This is our human nature, right? The first time I read the Bible front to back, I'm like, man, those Israelites are idiots. Like, God blesses them, they do good, and then they collapse. And God blesses them, and they do good, and then they collapse. That's human nature, right?
Let me just add, 2008 was a walk in the park compared to today.
Really?
2008 was a walk in the park compared to today, because I see people, I have a house for rent right now, and I'm interviewing people to do it. In order to rent a house, you have to have $90,000 income to rent a house. Okay, I bought a house and my income was $54,000 a year. And I bought a house. That's the difference. People are really, really struggling. The grocery store is a big struggle. The gas pumps are a big struggle. People are really struggling. And I didn't see that in 2008. I saw collapse. But the collapse was because we overbought, and then the market dumped, and then the value went down. And so when we lost the value in all our assets, the bank called all the notes. And
Yep.
I can name you 60 of my closest friends who lost everything.
I know a lot of people that did too.
They lost everything, but we were able to buy groceries then.
Yeah.
Groceries today, I got so mad on one of the aisles in the grocery store. I paid $6.88 for my Cheerios. I like Cheerios. $6.88 for a box of Cheerios.
All right, so let's put this into perspective, okay? The news came out yesterday. Somebody released a report that this administration has flown 320,000 illegals into the country.
Absolutely.
That, in my opinion, is
They did
treason.
that yesterday.
That is
Yes.
treason.
Yes.
But do the courts care,
No.
right? Like,
No.
obviously, they're not going to
No.
do anything.
No.
We've had estimated 10 million illegals come into this country, okay? So these illegals have access to funds, to welfare, things of that nature. They're competing against you at the grocery store in its basic supply and demand, and our infrastructure is set up to grow based on our birth rate,
Yep.
not a massive influx of individuals coming in. And when you really look at this, okay, then on top of that, you've got a government. We're doing $1 trillion of debt every 90 days right now, okay? $1 trillion of debt every 90 days. The Fiscal Responsibility Act, which was the dumbest thing that you could, that was the biggest lie that you could name, the Fiscal Responsibility Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, right? We had supply chain disruptions come through, but this administration is willing to run us off the cliff, to be deceitful, to paper over how things are looking, for the purposes of being in power, right? The media is behind it. You know, bad man here, bad man JFK, bad man Trump. I don't like any of the candidates that we have on the ticket, quite frankly. But there are some that we have to choose over the others. But the reality is, this is driven by the administration that's taken place. It is, you know, everywhere I turn, for the first time in 26 years, the clients who have planned well are complaining about the cost of living with food. I have a client that's very good on her budget, and she is unbelievably good at managing the funds of her household. And she's like, you know, my husband and I are arguing because I've come to the conclusion that it's just as cheap to go out and eat as it is to eat at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see,
It's crazy.
You can see how all that's driven together. Well, guess what that does? That runs corporate profits. And you've got a situation, if our government would stop all of this stupid spending, if they would stop racking us with debt and sending money somewhere else, these inflationary pressures would come down.
Sure.
If they would stop our borders so that, I got 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So that people would come in legally in the correct way. Yeah, you might still have something that happened in Athens every now and then, but it's not going to be happening all over the country like it is right now, and I'm running out of time, so I got to stop.
Thank you for being here today. And open your eyes, open your ears, pay attention to what you're doing. If you want to do a reverse mortgage, that's your business. Pay attention to every single thing you sign. Please, please don't leave your family in the kind of mess I've just seen.
Seek counsel, seek wise counsel.
Yep.
Pay somebody a little bit of a fee to have an attorney look at the document. Go see a financial advisor. There's good ones out there.
Yep.
Seek some advice.
That's a good one. It's time to go.